In the last week, I have been very impressed with Nikon's Z8 and also with the MC105 macro lens. Am I going to be as impressed with the R1C1, the macro lighting system from Nikon? We'll see. We're going to do more than just talk about the R1C1. We're also going to talk about all of the currently available Nikon flashes, but we're going to focus most of our attention on the R1C1. I experienced the R1C1 very early on in my career, and I didn't stick with it for a number of reasons, but mainly it struck me as overkill. I'm not exactly sure what the final straw was, but it could well have been the batteries. They were hard to find and didn't seem to last very long. And I ended up moving away from the R1C1 a long time ago. And I haven't gone back and looked at it again since. But I've now been using the Godox MF12s for going on 2 years now. And they're still going strong. I use them every day in the studio, and I use them whenever I go out in the field. And they've done a fantastic job. I like them. I use them in manual mode. I use them for my own creative lighting. And I have never really thrown myself behind the whole concept of TTL, not at macro level. It's just there's too much that a computerized system can mess up with the lighting at small scale. Small differences make huge differences in the final image. So I generally stick to manual. But I thought, seeing as I had an opportunity to revisit the R1C1 and give it a more thorough testing, that I would actually test everything about it. And that includes the ITTL, Nikon's version of the intelligent through the lens metering system. So for the last week, I have been shooting with the Z8 along with the MC105 f2.8 S macro lens from Nikon. And along the way, I've tried several different Nikon speed lights. Susan Seaford, who very kindly gave me the use of her camera for this set of videos, also lent me the flashes, all of the Nikon flashes that are currently available. And I've tried them all. I've used them all for macro. I've used them all for other things as well. And I'm going to compare those to their closest rivals in the Godox line, seeing as that's the one I'm most familiar with. But anyway, we're going to talk today about flash. And it is an area of weakness, I think, for Nikon. Not because their products are necessarily any worse than any of the other products on the market. In fact, I would say that in some cases, they're making stuff that is far superior to the other stuff on the market. But they don't have a tremendous track record for servicing these things or keeping them running. You will read a more than average number of less than average reviews of the less expensive middle range flash units from Nikon. I've read a lot of their reviews on their own website. And there are certainly plenty of issues. Now, the truth is, there are plenty of issues with everybody's flash. Flash is a delicate and relatively short-lived piece of tech. There are things that burn out in a flash unit, as you might imagine. The bulbs, the capacitors, the batteries. And certainly they can be a source of problems. So I'm not sure how much to read into the fact that there are some grumblings on their website. You're going to hear some grumblings from me too tonight, but it's simply because of a lack of coordinated effort to educate the public about their flashes. There are contradictions on their website with other marketing materials, and there are even contradictions within the manuals, the user manuals, and in their listings of compatible cameras. Now, I know that some of this stuff is a moving target, and some compatibilities will change as firmware updates are done and what have you. But I am no wiser this evening about the compatibility of Z cameras and in-house Nikon flashes than I was when I started, because depending on who you ask, you'll get different answers, and depending on how you ask it, you'll get different answers. Most of the flash units do work on most of the cameras, and that's important. But by work, I mean work fully as advertised. In other words, if the flash works but only half of the bulbs go off, then I consider that a fail. And similarly, if you have a flash that is part of their creative lighting system, or it mentions the creative lighting system in the documentation for the flash, yet it doesn't sync up with the CLS in the camera, that's a problem. That's a non-fully functional flash, in my opinion. And while Nikon states that their flagship, for example, the SB5000, I'll show you some closer pictures of these as we go. This is the SB5000. This is their flagship flash. And this is supposedly compatible with all the Z cameras. And it's not compatible with this particular Z camera. It will flash, and it will do most of the functions you would expect from an on-camera flash, but it doesn't communicate with the CLS in the camera, so you can't control the creative lighting aspect of it through the camera. And that's kind of why you pay $600 for this and $260 for this, which looks and feels and kind of flashes the same. In fact, the guide number on this is quite a bit higher than the guide number on this, which is 113, I believe, and this is something closer to 163. So this is a brighter flash. It takes a lithium-ion battery that's rechargeable. The Godox does. The Nikon's a little old-fashioned. It's still using 4 AA's, if you can get it open. There you go. 4 AA's, yeah. So this is their flagship. This is the best flash they have to offer, and it's expensive. It acts as a commander, as you would expect it would. It can fire countless other flashes in certain configurations, but all flashes do that. I mean, it can do it optically, it can do it over Wi-Fi, and I think it can do it over near field. So it is a very capable flash, just as the Godox is a very capable flash. There are some issues, though, with how far that capability extends. If you read the documentation for this flash, it'll tell you that if you want to use off-camera flash with cameras like, well, not cameras like, there's only 2 cameras that you can do it with, is the D5 and the D500, which is the APS-C, high-end APS-C camera. They're the only 2 that will work with this flash in creative lighting. And in order to make it work, you have to buy another $140 worth of transceivers and receivers to make it communicate with this. So it doesn't strike me as being all that ready for prime time. It seems like they could have done better than this by now, and maybe even planned to release a Z version of this flash when they release the cameras. It would seem that if they're sufficiently different that they would benefit from having an upgraded type of speedlight, then yeah, have that speedlight ready when the cameras are ready. People are spending $600 on this flash only to discover it's just a Godox, really. And that doesn't leave a good taste in some mouths. The next in line is the 700, the SB700. That is not a flash that I have presently in the house. It is similar to the big one, the 5000, has many of the same features. It's not quite as powerful, and it's not quite as expensive. It's about $350, so it's still twice a mid-range Godox price. And it apparently is not compatible with the Z cameras either. But I wasn't able to get a definitive answer on that, either from Adorama or B&H or Nikon. And that, I think that's what troubles me most of all about this, is that nobody seems to know. It's kind of buy it and put it on your camera and see if it works. And that's just not acceptable at these prices. So the next in line is a much more popular flash. This is a kind of all-purpose, inexpensive, compact flash, the SB500. And I like this little flash. It doesn't do much, though it actually can operate as a commander, I think, without having to buy any extra equipment, but I'm not sure about that. It operates off a couple of AA batteries, like the TT series of Godox. Compared to the TT series of Godox, this thing is a piece of art. It does a great job. It's reliable. It has none of the problems of the TT, and it's more powerful than that. It recycles quickly, even though the specs say it's got a pretty slow full flash recycle time. It seems to recharge pretty quickly. I didn't use this for any macro, while I did use the big one with a big sheet of Mylar, which is my go-to for running and gunning in the woods. So I didn't get an opportunity. I was going to do this weekend and see what kind of lighting I could get with it. The SB300 is a tiny little flash that fits on compact cameras. I've seen those in camera shops, but not lately, and I could not find anywhere online. So maybe they've discontinued them, I don't know. And that leads us to probably the flash I was most interested in, definitely, but also probably the one that you want to hear about, and that is the R1C1. The R1C1 is something of a mythical flash for those of us who've been doing this for a while but don't have the thing. It always looked spectacular, and it just had a very pro feel to it. And there's, ever since the thing was released, people have grumbled about the mechanism for holding the flashes on, called it flimsy, and it breaks easily, and all of these other things. I have found none of that to be true. I don't think it's flimsy at all. And I think it is a remarkable piece of equipment considering what it is. It's a ring of composite material that holds up to 5 of these SB200s. And the SB200s, compared to the Godox MF12s, and that is a very reasonable comparison to make, very reasonable. They look a lot the same, but they're not a lot the same. Take my word for it, they are not. The MF12s, by comparison to the R1C1 kit and the SB200s, are nowhere near as powerful, for one thing. The guide number for one of these MF12s is 13. That's at ISO 100, 35 millimeters. The SB200 has a guide number of 66 for 2 of them. 66 for 2 of them at ISO 100, 35 millimeters is going to give you a guide number of 33 per unit, which is double, more than double, what you're going to get from the MF12. They have a much better modeling light, a cleaner, whiter light. They recycle about as fast. The Godox gives you a huge number of channels and up to 4 groups to choose from. These little things, you just have 3 groups, A, B, and C, and you have 4 channels, and that's it. They take instruction from the SU800, which is far more capable than the X Pro even. And I love the X Pro. I use the X Pro trigger for my MF12s, and I've had no problem with it at all. It always works. It always does a good job. And its batteries last forever. This, I couldn't say the same. The batteries don't last forever, but it is a very capable unit for controlling these flashes. There is no hot shoe, there is no direct control of these. These are off-camera flashes. Let's compare briefly the mechanisms that hold these things in place, because this is really important, because I couldn't believe how different the two flashes are when you look closely. I'm going to take this actually off the camera. I've got it on my crop frame camera with the 85mm old macro lens because I wanted to see how it worked with this camera. It works flawlessly with this camera. It works flawlessly, but it doesn't show up in the CLS. I mean, it works flawlessly when you set it up through the commander. The ring is definitely more substantial than the Godox ring. The Godox ring is light and fairly flimsy. The way you get your flashes on and off the Godox is you move it to this area here that has the spring-loaded part. You move it to that area and then basically break it off like that. You bend it and pull it, and it comes off. Mine hasn't broken, but I haven't been taking them on and off a huge number of times. It feels like when you change the angle, not so much on that one, but on some of my MF12s, it feels for all the world like you're going to break that thing off. And also taking them on and off the ring is tough. The last thing I'd say is the adapter rings that you put on this in order to mount your camera. Let me find one. Well, I had a bunch of them up here. I don't know. Oh, there it is. So the rings that you use to mount the flash onto your lens look the same, but they are not the same. I promise they're not the same. What we'll do is that this is a thrown together system, because I couldn't find a 52 in either of the camera sizes. I beg your pardon, this is a 52 for the, yeah, this I have the 52 for the Godox, but I only had a 62 for the Nikon. So what I did was I put a couple of step up rings on the lens to take it from 52 to 55, 55 to 62, and then I put this on. Now, we're going to compare the two. Because this is a 52, I can put it straight onto the lens, and this should fill you with confidence that this is great. You've actually got an interchangeable system, so maybe you could just use SB200s on your Godox rig and count that as an upgrade. No, you can't. Now, to put the ring onto this ring, you actually have to kind of force it on from the side like this. It's got an area where there's an indentation, and you slide it onto the thing at an angle and then basically force it onto the ring like that until it clicks, and that will hold it perfectly steady. All right, so let's say you wanted to see, I'm not going to break my lens. I'm going to take this off here. Let's say you wanted to use one of these rings with the Nikon system. So you put the ring on your lens as usual. And yeah, Nikon makes a 52, and it comes in the R1C1 kit. So it should be cross-compatible. The Nikon works by, you have two tabs that you depress, and they're opposite one another, so you can do it with one hand, and that allows you to put the adapter in. So you squeeze the tabs, put the adapter in, and there you go. It does fit, it does hold, and it does turn on its own like this. It doesn't it won't hold position, because the ring that Nikon uses has got some knurling on it, and it offers resistance, and it holds its position. So this is something that obviously Godox cut a corner on, and I don't like it. So you can't use them interchangeably. If you're gonna go with the Godox system, you need to stay with the Godox system. But fortunately, the ring mounts perfectly. Oh, I've got to use my adapters. There was no vignetting with this, by the way, even though you'd think there might be. When you add step-up rings to a system like this, it kind of moves the flash out a bit far in front of the lens, but it didn't cause any problems. So this just goes onto my step-up rings, and then we'll snap the ring on. You'll see I'm very comfortable doing this on the camera because it's atraumatic. It doesn't involve forcing anything. And once it's on, your flashes move around just like they do with the Godox. Only, I don't know if you heard that, they're much more positive, and you can feel the clicks and they stay in position. I can see why people who've never used the Godox would say that these are flimsy, because they wobble a bit. I mean, they're plastic, but they are made much better than the Godox, and they stay on the ring incredibly well. That is not always true with the Godox. If your Godox manages to get on that removal area, you can knock it off. These have a tab behind each SB200 that you simply unlock it and take it off. That's nice. It means you're not forcing anything. You're not trying to make it do something it doesn't feel like it wants to do. Putting it back on is just as easy. You put the toe, or is it the heel? It's the toe. You put the toe of the clamp underneath the front rim, and then just simply lock it in place, and that's it, done. Once you turn it on, there's no dial to twist like with the MF12. You just turn it on. And interestingly, if you're using a compatible camera, when you put this on the hot shoe and your camera's turned on, this will turn on too. So it'll kind of anticipate your needs. But the controls are dead simple, and you can set up these flashes to be manual, like I use the MF12s. But I've also been experimenting with them in ITTL. I did it just so that I could say that I had done it, and was so impressed with the results here in the studio, I started using it outside. And I must say, for the first time in my entire photographic life, I discovered that it is in fact possible to use good TTL at macro scale. I didn't think it would be. Many of the photographs in the lens video were taken using flash on this system in TTL, which is a huge departure from me. That is not something I would normally do, and I wouldn't do it with the Godox. I was not happy with the results when I tried that. Now, there is something that troubled me about these when I had the system set up in manual mode. And this is weird. I have a hard time explaining it. I set this up in manual mode and put both the lights on the same setting. And then I sat at my desk and I took 10 pictures in a row of exactly the same thing on my desk. And then I did the same with the MF12s. The illumination on these in manual mode was all over the place. I mean, they would go from bright to dark to very bright to very dark, and randomly. Yet the MF12s were absolutely consistent in manual mode. That makes me wonder whether or not there was something in the settings that was causing it that I wasn't aware of, and that's distinctly possible. But when I used these on my macro rig, I didn't have any trouble at all. They performed flawlessly with this camera and with the D850. I didn't use flash when I was using I didn't use the Nikon flash when I was using the Z8. I'm not sure why. I had a good reason, but I can't remember what it was. So these then are better flashes, in my opinion. They are more ruggedly made. They feel considerably more substantial. They're dense feeling. They're quite heavy, but it doesn't add a whole lot to the weight of the system. They're not that heavy. A couple of drawbacks. Unfortunately, both the flashes and the commander use CR123 batteries, which I've never liked, and mainly because they're so expensive and hard to find. But I was loaned 8 of them, 9 of them, so they haven't been a problem for me. And actually, they last quite a long time. In the flashes, they last a real long time at real settings that you'd be using in the field. Yeah, sure, if you were to shoot at full power, they wouldn't last that long, but they'll certainly be good enough to get your stack done for sure. So these are good. These are rechargeable 123s as well, so you don't have to go buy them and throw them away, which is good. So all in all, I think Nikon could do itself a favor by getting its act together when it comes to flash. I don't necessarily think they need to make a Z flash. Maybe that would be a good thing, but they need to do something. If only improve their public relations to where we, the buyers, know what flash is compatible with what cameras and what limitations you're going to experience if you buy one that isn't. I'm not bothered by the fact that the CLS doesn't work, except for the fact that I wanted to try it on this new camera. I wanted to see what it could do. But I couldn't because the flash, it was grayed out in the menu when I put the flash on. So it's just that. I mean, I think they could do a better job of that. That doesn't even begin to chip away at the fantastic job they've done with this camera and this lens. This combo is really one of my, it's one of the most exciting combinations of camera and lens I've ever used together. There's a video that covers the lens, and there's another video that covers the camera. So that's it on the flashes. The flashes are flashes, and they do their job most of the time very well. The only big surprise in all of this for me was just how good the R1C1 is. We didn't talk about price. We should talk about price. The R1C1 costs $1,100 if you buy 2 additional SB200s, which I would recommend you do. Maybe to compare apples to apples, the 2-light kit, the R1C1, which comes in a big box with countless accessories that come with it, that's $774. That's a lot of money. The Godoxes are not cheap. When you buy the kit, you're buying 2 of the flashes plus some filters and diffusers and a nice case. The R1C1 is going to cost you more than $1,000 if you get 4 flashes. The Godox will come in considerably less than that, probably closer to $500 or $600. My impression is that the R1C1 is fairly priced at that $1,100, and the Godox is a little overpriced, which is a strange conclusion to reach. But yeah, the Godox have been fantastic for me in the studio, but I don't really like using them outdoors. They're a bit flimsy, and I worry about breaking them outdoors. I think they're better on the macro rig where they belong. These R1C1s are in their element outside. They are doing their thing when you just let them do their thing. I would be less comfortable using these in the studio, so maybe the secret is to get both. I never thought of that. That's a good idea. Get both. Use the R1C1 outside on your MC105 and your Z8. Use your old D7500 indoors and just get some Godoxes. Problem solved. That was easier than I thought. That's it for Nikon for now. We're going to take a break from Nikon so that the Canon and Fuji and everybody else shooters will have something to talk about. And coming up in the near future, I'm going to be getting my hands on a GFX 100. Yeah, we're gonna try medium format macro. I cannot wait. That's going to be so much fun. I have thoroughly enjoyed this month of Nikon, and once again want to thank Dr. Susan Seaford for making it possible. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you. Thanks to everybody who supports me. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon group, go ahead over to Patreon, look for me, Alan Walls Photography, and it'll tell you how to join. When you join, good things happen, and you get lots of karma, that type of thing. So consider it. It's a huge help to me. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next live stream. Till then, take care and be safe. Good night.